Hey folks, we blew through the animation with the tailed ball a little bit and we discovered some things. And I wanted to redo the demo so you guys could all see it and refer back to it. So can't guarantee length. I'm going to try to keep it on the shorter side, but I'm also going to try to do some animation real time so you can see it, especially working with the tail. I know that was pretty confusing. So I want to improve on this for you guys so you can do a better job. I should say I've also updated the base file 4 times now because of various things that I realized we didn't really talk about a lot in class. I know it's going to mess a lot of you guys up. So I said in the instructions that you can make your own camera. Still totally cool, but I also included one. So if you don't want it, just click on this and delete it and create your own. To do that, just choose, well, actually, probably don't do that. Panels, perspective, animation, camera. I've set some color stuff, some background, some rendering things that will make this work better. And that's probably to your benefit. So, but I'll leave it up to you if you want to do that or not. For most of you, what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to set up a layer for our environment and then reference in the character and set up your obstacle course. So I'm going to do that right now so you can see what that looks like. I'm just going to grab my main nodes for the obstacle course in the background here. I'm going to press Control G to group it, and I'm just going to call this environment. I'm then going to click on that box, and under layers I'm going to choose create layer from selected. If later on you create new things that aren't part of that layer, like say something like this, you can always click on them and just right click and choose add selected objects, and then they will all be locked to that layer. The reason why we want to do this is once we set the obstacle course, I'm going to want to be able to lock off this layer by turning it to R mode or reference mode, and now you can't click on any of that stuff. You can only click on the character, which will make animation much, much easier. Really quick, I'm going to set up just a basic animation here. If you're having trouble at all or a little bit nervous about this one, which is totally fair, just because we kind of blew through it quickly, feel free to set up, just leave it the basic, just move these guys around where you want them relative to each other. If you want to duplicate them, that's cool. Totally up to you. Don't overdo it in such a way that you're not going to have time to actually make the assignment happen. So, do this within reason. So I'm going to do something like this. I don't know. This seems interesting. You can rotate these if you want. The only rule here, of course, is that you need to make sure that at least one of these and one of these is perpendicular to each other. If you need to, you can do things like scaling them and stuff like that. It's fine. But I wouldn't go smaller than this. It's going to make your job a lot harder, and you don't need it to be any harder. Let's see. The cool thing is, even though I guess that was already set up like that. Because this environment is in this layer, anything I put in this group will automatically be in this layer, so that's kind of nice too. I'm going to just double click and call this environment layer. Oh, it's not valid because it needs to have an underscore in it or no spaces. So there we go. You want to take a moment and kind of set up your camera to something you think looks good. I'm actually kind of liking this. This is a pet peeve of mine. I hate when students leave like a background just sort of going off in the distance to a point. What you want to do is arrange this to look like a horizon line. So make it go horizontal to the camera, stretch it out, and now we just have a nice horizontal line to work with, horizon line to work with. And if you want to add an angle to it, that's fine, only if it makes sense for your shot. I'm going to Control H in this directional light so I don't have to look at it. Nope, no, I won't do that. That's going to turn it off. So I'm just going to move it to the side. This is a directional light, so ultimately it doesn't matter where it is, it only matters how it's rotated. So if I just put it, I guess I'll do this really quick. If I were to rotate this around, we can kind of get a sense of where the shadows are going to be and what this will look like and get the look that we're looking for. Maybe I'll do something more like this. There, I kind of like that. And then you can just move it off to the side. Doesn't matter where it is. Cool. So I have my camera, I have my lights, I have my horizontal plane for horizon line, I have my obstacle course, and I have my layers. So I'm going to lock those back off. I'm going to lock the camera right here. And now just do a test render. Make sure I like what I got. Cool. This is on ray tracing, so it's going to be a little slower than it would be normally, but this looks good. If you do want to change the background color of the camera, a couple quick tips here. You can select your camera right here, or you want to click on it over here is fine. Control A will bring you the attribute editor for the camera. And then I already have it revealed, so I'll hide this. Normally it comes up like kind of like this. If you go down to output settings and environment, I'm sorry, just the environment, you can change your background color right here. So if you want to change it so it's in the render, you can. It defaults to black, but I put it on something a little more useful for us. So something like this. And if you go to display options, I like to turn my gate mask color down. That's this part right here, only because it helps me see the frame better. So you can do that. And there's also a transparency function there too. So cool. I have my shot set up. I'm ready to go. I'm going to save this out as a new file. So let's see here. I'm going to call this test and version 2, and I'll underscore and make a note. Course and file set up. There we go. At this point, all I need to do is bring in my character. So I'm just going to go to File, Create Reference, find my tailed character, and bring them on in. They start in apparently in the middle of the ground. That's fine. It's a little weird, but it just means I need to go. Let's see here. Underneath and grab this controller and move it up a little bit. So something like that. It'd be good to know where the ground plane is, like where it starts to go underneath the ground. So maybe I'll go underneath the ground to set that now. So it looks like the right setting for this file, at least, is 0.742 will keep me on the ground. Great. I am now ready to go, and now I can start animating. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to figure out how you want to go through your obstacle course, and you want to figure out what kind of character your ball is. I'm going to actually turn off shadows for the moment. So lighting, shadows, they're slower to render, and right now they're just kind of in the way and confusing. So you want to figure out the personality of your ball, maybe a couple actions that would help sell that personality, and then you want to go ahead and set up the course, block it out. So blocking out, it's always going to be first. In this case, I'm thinking, well, I'll talk through it, but I'm not going to animate this whole thing because I'll be here all day. But I'm thinking maybe the character, actually it might be fun if you like bounded in from way back here, doing, 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 and then turned around or like flipped around with the tail. Maybe for that purpose, I'll start the character here and facing this way. I'm actually going to add, just it's a little bit easier to see for tail type. I'm going to set it to fox or beaver. You don't have to keep this or do this if you don't want, but it'd be good for blocking out. You can always change it later because I can see the orientation of the character just by looking at the face. It looks like this is happening to a lot of you guys. You're losing your controls. It happened to me too. I guess it's a good thing. Your controls are usually under Show, Viewport, and you want to make sure NURBS curves are on, or Alt-1. I don't know why they would disappear just from me changing the character type, but there they went. So, you know, here if the character was coming kind of like this, switch to object mode, you know, if the character was coming from all the way back here, bounded in to here, and then swished around, and then we jumped through here to try it out. I'm going to have them do one bounce here, turn, and then maybe bounce and jump and land. Obviously you have to go through both, but I'll let you figure the other ones out. I just want to give you a sense of how to set this up. All right, so that's my plan. So here, bounce to here, turn. It's actually not the best composition. Maybe something more like that. I just like it kind of rotated so we can see what's happening. So I guess I'll cheat it a little bit. I'll do something like this. And then the character will come from like back here. All right. So remember that when you start animating, And typically, we're not going to animate this control right here, the super mover. It's just going to get us into trouble. So I'm going to take it and hide it. Control H, or if you prefer, display, hide selection, and you can see the hotkey there. If you want to bring it back, just click on your character right here. Open it up one time. This is the root that I just hid. You can operate on it here if you want to, or you can go to display, show selection, or shift H is how you bring it back. But I'm happy with it gone, so I'm going to leave it just like that. All right, so I'm ready to start. Let's start animating. So for this part of it, I am not going to use my auto key. I want to only set keys on the major poses so I can adjust my timing and keep everything in line and in order. So let's drop this down to like 200 or something. So when we key here, we want to key everything. Remember that if you're grabbing stuff and you're constantly in the background, you need to turn your background to R mode so that you can't click on it. Template mode T works as well too, but we don't have the ground plane, so we can't actually see what we're doing. I noticed that these files keep defaulting to frame 0. Frame 1 is a better frame to start, just because we don't usually render frame 0. So I'm going to start there, grab everything, and press S to lock this in here. So I'm going to be doing a lot of animation over here, but constantly looking over here to see how it actually looks. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to have the character make it to the next pose in one bounce. So remember, I want him kind of around here. Kind of play with depth a little bit. And again, just grab everything. Oops. Help if I change the key. Think about how long you think this would take. If you want, use Animato to like just picture it in your mind. So like doing with a little squash. So 1/1000. So maybe 20, 24. I'm going to do 20 to keep it spunky. I can always change it later. So again, up here. I don't want to line up perfectly with this background guy. It's going to be a little bit ugly. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. You can even play it back right away to kind of get a sense of the speed. Notice I didn't put the jump in yet. It's easier to put the two ground plane contacts in and then put the jump in afterwards. I should check my frame rates too. So clicking the little guy with the gear, going to make sure we're at 24 frames per second, and playback speed is at 24. So both are, that's good. Can't really tell if that's going to be enough yet, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the bounce and think about how high I want it. Oops, just want to grab that middle control. That's it. So think, do I want a high bounce or a low bounce? To me, that's a little slow actually, so I'm going to speed this up. I'm going to put this at, say, frame 16. I'm just holding in shift and dragging through here. If you shift and drag, you can click in the middle and slide this wherever you want. Let's see. That's better. A little faster and spunkier. Maybe the character is going to anticipate and then look over here. Or maybe it's going to spin a few times. By the way, now that we actually have a tail, we could actually pose it. I'll start off by not posing it. You can see how that will kind of cause me some issues. But when he does the next move, I'm going to have to... I'm definitely going to pose as I do it. So the character is going to anticipate a little bit and then look over here. So let's see here. We're going to anticipate down. I'm just guessing 22 frames. I don't know for sure. So squash down. Now I will say that when you squash, with this, the tail does some weird stuff. So you might want to squash less than normal. Or just take it a little bit easy in the squash and stretch. Let's see. I'm going to make him... Make sure, by the way, when you're rotating this character, you're in object mode for the most part. So you can double click on the rotation here, and then under axis orientation, type in object, or under translation, same thing. go into axis orientation and put an object. It often defaults to world, which is not great for this. So I'm going to grab my control and just pose the tail really quick. So he's just going to pull up his tail, and again I'm going to key everything. So he's going to go from here to here. Down, and then I'm going to have him turn really quickly like a squirrel, even though he's a fox. So he's going to, let's see, maybe I'll just have him just for fun. I'm going to zero out the tail. And I'm going to undo the squash here. I'm going to pose the tail, this time by grabbing all the controls at once and then rotating them all at once. And I'm going to rotate him not just one time, but 2 times, just for the cute factor. Of course, oops. Oh, I did something weird. I must not have keyed everything, specifically the tail. I don't think I keyed anything. One more time. Sorry for the issue. I'm just going to zero this out. Switch to rotation. Create a rotated tail. Key everything. So he's going to, again, anticipate. I'll probably have to add in a couple poses here because I expect it's going to look weird. I want him to zero out the head a little sooner. So I think this is going to be way too fast, but let's just take a look. Yeah. That is more than I was thinking, or faster than I was thinking. So I'm just going to give him a bunch more frames to play with here. Again, grab everything, shift, slide, and drag. Give myself a bit more time to actually rotate. I'm going to delete this and then redo it. The main thing I want, I guess I'll put in one in between. I'm just going to turn this off so that he goes back to a normal shape. Let's see how that looks. He's a little bit slow on the squash there. Let's take a look at that. That's too fast. I'm just looking at that squash and stretch in the body. I want him to squash down a little bit. This is actually a little bit too slow too. Or too fast, sorry. Give myself a little more time to have him squash. I'm also not crazy about my tail pose, so I'm going to fix that. You can't really see it from the front. It's also a little boring and just like one-dimensional, so I'm going to give it a little shape to it. There we go. So he's going to squash down, spin twice, and then end up looking at this guy. Let's see how the timing feels now. It's not the most exciting pose, but we're getting somewhere. Maybe I'll add a little more squash in there just for fun. That's better. And then I'd like to put a follow through in there, just like when our hand hits the table, or we run into something, or we snap our fingers or point. I need a finishing move for this. So he spins, and then I need a finish. So I'm going to keep this relatively simple. Let's say 10 frames to settle down. And I'm just going to have a little extra rotation, but back the other way. I'm going to set auto key for this one. So he rotates back a little bit. So it hits and comes back. Oh, my bad. I already did that. Let's just see how that feels. Bounce, flip. It's a little weird, but not bad. Maybe he just tilts down a little bit to get ready for the next move. Alright, it's a little weird just because of the tangents, but I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to add in a little bit of tail follow through too. So, you know, as he spins around, we're going to have that tail settle out. So I'm going to grab all these. And actually maybe I'll just, so a lot of times I'll just zero these things out because they get so wonky. I didn't grab this one. And then I'll just repose it. So he's going to flip and then the tail will come. Let's see what that looks like. If you can start to feel this process out, I'm thinking what I want to have happen and then just playing with it. Now there's some weird stuff here that is because of the graph editor, like the tail takes too long, like it kind of pauses before it comes over, but that's because it probably is a flat tangent when it shouldn't be. I also don't want the tail to be hanging in the air. The whole idea here is he should be relaxed. So I'm going to just pose this down the ground a little bit. So just adjusting it until I feel like maybe it would believably be resting on the ground. And then you can see that each time what I'm doing is I'm going back to play it and watch it to see if I'm starting to get something that I like. Again, even if I'm getting, you know, weird stuff like with this tail, the timing on it is, oh, that's my bad. Damn it. So I want this to be the final pose, not that other one. So I'm going to copy all these. So right click, copy. I'll show you a better way to do this later. And then right click, paste, and just paste. So that will make the tail settle as part of that pose. And actually, in my mind, it would be a better pose and a little cuter if it rotated a little bit farther than I'm currently doing. So something like that. Cool. And that key just because I had auto key on. I'm going to turn that back off so I don't make any mistakes. And now I would set up my jump where he's going to do a small jump and then jump through the hoop. Okay. I'm not going to worry about the tail in this one. I'm just going to zero it out because I'm going to go later and probably add some of those poses in. So here we go. Again, just make sure in the last pose everything is keyed. Just pressing S, S. And again, he's going to anticipate down. So I'm thinking a little bit longer in this one. So squash. If you want, for the anticipation pose, and I probably would do this, I'm going to go ahead and add in a new pose for the tail. So I'll zero it first. And then I'm just thinking that his tail will go up for this. I don't know what it would actually do, of course. It's up to me. So something like that. Again, key everything. S, that locks in that pose. So up. And then we're going to have him move forward and bounce. I'm going to try to save the squash and stretch for after this. So once he gets in the air, I'm going to stop playing with that. Just because later on I can add it in and it'll be a lot easier, like we did with the squash and stretch on the other bouncing ball. So the next pose, I'm thinking for this one, this is going to be a short bounce, so maybe like 12 frames, maybe a little bit more, something like this. for the whole bounce. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to slide him forward or towards this one. I need to double check in here to make sure I'm getting the right angle. So he'd probably be rotated a little bit like that. And then I'm going to fix the pose. Once again, it'll probably be a little bit easier just to zero this out. Going to zero this out. We'll add in another layer later on with that. Looks like he is in the ground, so I'm going to move him up. Something like this. That also probably means he's in the ground on these other poses too. So for right now I'm just going to key him in here. Oh, it's because of the squash and stretch, I guess. Alright. And then let's see what we got. Yeah, and for this one, I just need to add in a bounce in the middle. So we'll get him up. Maybe he's looking up a little bit for this one. I could definitely repose the tail and zero out the squash and stretch. So again, notice I keep going back to that tail at 0. That's because as you keep working off the same tail you had before, what you tend to end up with is a tail that gets really twisted and messed up. So so zeroing out means you're constantly coming back to sort of a base pose, which guarantees that you're going to be getting a better pose. So whoop, and land. I could put another pose in there right now, but I'm not going to. I'm just kind of feel it out as I go. So let's see what we have so far. Whoop. There we go. And now it'll just be a matter of going straight up and through there. I'm going to pause and just do it. So this is getting pretty long. I don't want you guys to get too lost in it. So I'll put in the extra jump and then come back and show you what it looks like. All right, so I added in a bunch more keys, just doing the main blocking. So this is what it looks like if it is jump between the keys. Up, down. There's a pause here. He flips around to look at the obstacle, then anticipates, jumps up, jumps down, jumps through, lands, and does a little bobble jump there. Normally I probably just keep going through all three of those because there's not much room to play, but I'm going to stop here because you guys obviously are getting the point. So it's just, and I add a little squash and stretch at the end. So if I'm just going through the major keys, we're just getting the major movements, and that is it. That's what we're aiming for. If I do play it at full time or full speed, I feel like the end is too short. He's supposed to be really spunky. And this whole sequence here, as he jumps and comes down and jumps through and bobbles, is all way too slow for me. So I would just retime this part out, probably using the dope sheet. I'll do that in just a second here. So blocking is definitely one of the more time-consuming parts of this, but if you do nice blocking, big payoff in the end. So let's see. I'm just going to go to the dope sheet. So Window, Animation Editor's dope sheet. If you have the graph editor open, you can always just click on up here dope sheet. We're not using the time editor right now, but you can click on the dope sheet and it will bring it right up. By the way, I did see that some of you were missing the list over here. It might be hidden. If you look at my cursor, it has a double arrow for the side of the wall. And if I go a little bit farther in, it does a vertical double arrow, and then I can reveal the summary. So that might have happened to some of you. If that's not it, let me know and we'll figure out what's going on with you guys. So to retime this using the dope sheet, I'm just going to grab all the controls. We want to retime everything. I'm going to hit A to zoom all, and now we can see the actual keys here. Make sure, and we can also see where we haven't done the right thing, like right here, this key should be on everything. So I'm going to grab all the controls again, just make sure, and press S. I want these to be locked in completely. Same thing here too, S. This is a pause, but I'll key that in too. Your keys should be all the way through every single control. So if you have all the controls selected and press S, you'll get just that. To move keys around, remember you want to be in the translate mode. You can grab dote sheet summaries to grab all the keys at once, or you can do drag boxes around the keys that you want to. I'm mostly going to use the dope sheet summary here. So I'm going to hold in K to drag through these and see what each one is doing. And this is where I said it's not fast enough. So I'm going to start here, grab all the keys here, and just actually let's press F to zoom in a little bit. It's easier to see. And that's going to trim them down a little bit. So I'm just going to make these events a little bit closer together. So that makes the first bounce closer together. And 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 12 frames. I'm going to go even less. So I want this a little bit tighter. All these should be tighter. So now my bounce here is going to be, the first bounce will be much faster. I'm going to ignore that the in-betweens are terrible. This one I want to have to be a little faster too. I'm just going to knock off 1 frame on that side and enough frames on this side to keep it even. And then we have the land, and then this whole thing was also too slow. So I'm going to take off 2 frames here and then knock this down a little bit faster too. I don't know what that guy is. Let's see. Oh, I know what this is. That's my squash. Squash, jump. Technically this should also be all keys, so I'll key that too. So I want all my keys all the way down. If you look at the graph editor, it looks something like this. Again, every major key, no matter what's going on between, has all the controls selected and keyed. So we're not missing some like right here. Like we don't have like keys here but not here. That's what we want to avoid. Cool. So let's see. That was just retiming it. Let's see how the retime looks. Just try and get a feel for it. Much better. Much more spunky and fun. I could probably even go faster here, but this is okay for now. So now we're retimed. You'll notice though it doesn't look great, and that's of course because the graph is bad. So I need to go in and fix the graph just like we did with the ball, and this will immediately take on a much better feeling. So I'll walk you through that too. Notice I haven't touched the tail other than do some basic poses. I haven't done really much with the squash and stretch other than to put in stuff that I think is really important. The rest of that I'll put in later. So so this is a good spot to be in. Let's go ahead and do a pass on the graph. All right. So now that we have the blocking, we like what we have, we like the timing of it, we can now go in and adjust the graph to get a better feel for it and maybe do another run of timing if we got it off. So I'm just going to go to the graph editor. Actually, let's see, I might, all right, see if I can get this all in here. It's a little tight. So I'm just going to shrink this up a bit. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through this one little bit of animation at a time. I guess I'll put this over here. So I'm just going to grab the first set of keys, press F to zoom in a little bit, maybe do a little bit tighter. You can always just grab one set and press F to zoom in even closer, and then A again to zoom all. So it's going to hold in K and scrub through here, thinking about the type of tangents. I'm just going to do basic tangents here for the most part. So here, remember, this should be springing off. So I'm just going to use a linear tangent to fake it. So this will be a faster acceleration. At the top of this, it should be a flat tangent. We'll fix up the other one in just a second. And then when it lands, same thing. It should be a linear tangent for max acceleration. Well, not for max acceleration, but for a feeling of acceleration. Should probably put some kind of follow through in here that I didn't put in. So, maybe here I would add a little squash and stretch. Just not, this should be part of the blocking, but actually that double bounce might be a little funny looking. Yep, it's funny looking. So actually I didn't like what I did. So again, just going to select the parts I want. This is the key I put in there. I'm just going to delete that. So this one, again, I want it to accelerate in, but on this side, maybe I'll just choose a spline. I'll probably still have to put another pose in there, but it's not a squash and stretch pose. Now this one here, as the character gets ready to turn around, this is going to be an ease in, ease out. So I want him to come to a stop and then start up again. Same thing here. If you're going to go the opposite direction, we typically are going to ease and ease out. But in this case, it's the beginning of this spin move. So this is more of an kind of in the middle of the movement. I'm going to do a spline here to keep the movement a little bit more smooth. I'm not liking this kind of drag to the ground, so I'm going to fix that too. So I'm just going to ease and ease out of both these sides. Now I still want him to accelerate here. So he's going to accelerate in, come to a really uncomfortable stop, which I'll fix later. Because remember, we're just trying to get the feel of this, and whatever is wrong, we can add another pose in there or change the graph. So that's feeling pretty good. He spins. And then I want to think about how I want to transition into this moment here. So this is definitely going to be an ease in, ease out. I want him to come to a nice complete stop. This moment then is right in the middle. So this one, I'm going to add in a spline. So it makes a nice continuous movement all the way through that pose. That should even out the tail. Just going to move over here. This is kind of a nice zoomed in distance. We're then going to have an ease in, ease out here. So for this one, I could decide like a part of the body eases in and eases out, but I'm just trying to be quick and rough. So I'm going to keep it as is. This one is an ease in, ease out. And then he's going to take off. Now, as he takes off, this side of it is going to be linear, right? I want him to leap suddenly. Boing, something like that. This is going to be a continuous move. We could also do ease and ease out, but that might do some weird things with the tail. The tail is probably going to mostly be spline. Sorry, brain's not functioning. Now, the frame right before this one, I'm going to put in one in between here because I want the this part of the body to be back to normal at this point. So just the body. Everything else is going to be continuous because remember, I want him to be full size before he hits. So here, squash, and then bounce again. And same thing on the back side. So I'm just going to zoom in here. So when he takes off again, he should only be squashed to that one frame. So right here, I'm also going to grab this and put it back to normal size. So it's just that one moment. Squash, jump. Now I guess I'll have to fix up some of those previous ones too. I'll do that afterwards. Okay, we're almost there. Let's move this over here so I can see what I'm doing. Again, holding K and drag. So here, he should be full and whole. I'm going to go ahead and flat tangent that. And he's going to come down here. And that looks a little bit weird, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Once again, before this pose right here, I want him to be unsquashed, like this. So that should keep him full size all the way through here. And then squashed only on the contact frame. And then the frame afterwards, again, unsquashed immediately. So we only want that squash when he's contacting the ground. I have it on auto key, so it should be auto keying this every time. And I'm only keying just the squash and stretch guy, not the not everything. And then we have the same thing again right here. So I'm going to zero this out. Before contact, and then on contact. This is one's going to be a little bit slower. We're going to let that one just kind of ride it out a little bit slower. if we want to be persnickety here, we could do an ease and ease out on the last squash and stretch. Actually, all these, really. Now let's go back to the beginning and double check we didn't need squash and stretch there. We didn't start with it here, so we're kind of off the hook there. But when he lands, this would be nice to add the squash and stretch in, which I just didn't have. So I'm just going to key this really quick just to put something in rough on the squash. We can make this a slightly longer one probably. So maybe so full unsquashed, squashed. We'll do one more frame of squashed, squash, squash, and then it will release. Let's see how that looks. It's not bad, but there's a little weird hitch in here at the top of the jump. And it happens again right here where it kind of stops moving forward. And that's because, this is important, so this is the translate Z of the main root. What you'll notice here, and you can actually even see it in the graph, you see right here where, if I were to zoom into that, in the middle of this move it stops. So it's supposed to be one continuous jump, but it stops in the middle because at the top of the jump I hit the flat tangent. But that was just for the Y. That was just for this. I shouldn't have put that on the Z. I can either spline this to make it continuous. Look at the difference. It's one continuous move now. Or I could probably just get rid of this altogether, including, well, no, I'd probably keep that pretty linear. It's only the translate Y where I really need this to accelerate in. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. I don't think I can see all my controls. There we go. So this side should be flat. And this side here needs to be accelerated. Like that. Same thing on this side. So something more like this. I could even do a little bit of hang time there, but I don't want to go too crazy. So just like our bouncing ball, that'll give us a better looking bounce. Right here, it'll accelerate better. And then just like with the bouncing ball, playing with this, and I guess I can try to play with a flattened tangent here for some kind of slow out. Just like our bouncing ball, that should make a more convincing jump. We can do the same thing for the other areas that are a little bit awkward looking. You can see a flat tangent here and a flat tangent here are making this motion really awkward. Let's see if I can get this in here for you guys so you can see it. So as he jumps, he slows down in midair right here, but it should be a continuous move. So this one I'm just going to delete. And then again right here, right in the middle, it stops. And you can see it if you're looking for it. So the only time I want this to stop and start might be here at the very beginning. Maybe I'll do an ease in. So he eases into the move and then speeds up. But now it's one continuous move. And we could have that just keep going so it feels like he's moving through. If we wanted to, we could put an ease and ease out here too. But then he'll stop for the first bounce and then continue forward, which might be fun, or it might be not what I'm picturing. So, and these are all fine. Let's just see what it looks like. So, it's not bad. I think I want this to be continuous though. So I'm going to put this in spline mode. If necessary, I can adjust it. Let's see what it looks like when you just run through that spot. Maybe not enough weight. Yep. So I'm going to put the, I could also do just a slight slowdown, but not a full slowdown. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, I like that. Cool. So now I can check the whole thing out and just see if my blocking with the graph editor fix is feeling pretty good. It's pretty good. I kind of would have liked to adjust some timing still, but just to save time because we're getting really deep at this point and we still haven't really done the tail. I'm going to go ahead and stop. But I just visually, just watching this, there still seems to be, it still seems a little bit slow here. I want this to be a little faster through the main hoop. And then on the back side here, I still feel like that bobble should be a little slower. One thing I could do is I could add a flat tangent to the last key to make it ease out better, because right now it's not easing very much. It's probably a good time to also show you guys, I'll show it in class again, but for those of you who want to play with it, if you press 1, 2, or 3, these are all different ways to view the graphs, which can be really helpful. So I can see that's probably an issue there, but mode 1 is what we usually see it as, which is just we see all the data and we see all the graphs against the data. The problem is if you have a curve like this that's way off the mark, I'm going to delete it temporarily, it means that when we zoom out, we don't really get to see much because that one's really, it's kind of blowing the range here. So if I press A now, to get it all in there, they have to shrink it down. If you press 2, it shows all the graphs spread out, so none of them overlap with each other, and you can see all the graphs at once. That can be helpful in identifying something like a graph that's doing more than one of the others. Like I can select this and see over here that it is this. It's the translate Y that's got some stuff going on. This is probably the squash and stretch. Yep, control top. So, in fact, I'm going to fix that tangent. And this tangent also needs to be splined. I can just tell because it gets messy in the middle. You'll get used to seeing this and reading it. And it might be that this one would work better without an in-between. I'm just going to try it and spline to make it a continuous movement. So this is just a visual thing. I know what these curves mean when they're doing weird stuff like that and what type of movement I'm looking for. So the last mode is number 3, which shows all the graphs from here to here regardless of their values. So they just kind of laid over top of each other. And again, that can help you identify some potentially weird things like this movement right in the middle that is non-continuous, this one too. But you have to be careful. You can't just fix all those willy-nilly. You do need to check and see what they're doing. So here, this is, trying to find it. It's the rotate X on, I don't even know what that is. I can just click on it, I guess. I think it's the main controller. Nope, it was the second controller on the tail. So, but I'm not super concerned about that at the moment. Yes, this is probably not great. Actually, that is one thing that would bother me. So let's actually fix that. Right here, I just noticed in terms of the motion, as it swings around, it kind of stops right here in the middle, or it feels like it does. So I just want to make sure this section right here is a continuous movement. So I'm just going to make sure that's splined. Looks like it is. Okay. So I should make sure that this whole jump tail land thing is all one continuous move. So I could actually take all these and make sure they're splined. That just again encourages or ensures continuous movement. The tail will not stop. All right, so at this point we're ready to do our first pass in the tail. Actually, I'd probably do the head control first. This is just like it was before when we did the bouncing ball, meaning I just go through and do a pass on wherever the head needed to be squashed. So like even this first frame here, I'd probably, you know, squash this here just to start so that I'm not sure how much I do animation like this, but it could be fun. Just going through and kind of looking for opportunities to use the squash and stretch. I mean, this could get pretty silly depending on what you want to do. And I also feel like the tail, again, doesn't do great with squash and stretch. So I'd be a little bit wary about going crazy, but it definitely could be fun. So, you know, do whatever you're compelled to do in that sense. Let's see, I probably would zero this out here. Just so as he's coming down, there's a chance to elongate. And it looks like, just recognize if you do a big squash and stretch in the character, while it's going to be fun, it's likely that the tail's going to fight it a bit. So, and you can't lean it in the direction of the bounce like we did before. So just trying to give them a little flexibility just for fun. So even that alone feels pretty good to me. So once you've done a pass on the squash and stretch, as much or as little as you like, just a little bit goes a long way. I would now do a pass on the tail. So what that's going to consist of is, you can see that some of my poses that I put in here, like right here, this one's working kind of nicely. I like the twirling one. We got that little spin there, which I think is really nice. This anticipation has a bit of a pose. If you're unsure what to do, having the tail go the opposite direction of the body is usually going to result in something good. And of course, as we get momentum, you can stretch that out a bit. So it kind of dies at the end. There's not really any poses there. So I would go through each pose and try to get something moving here, something that's actually going with the flow the way that we would hope. So this isn't overlapping action. This is just doing some poses and in-betweens on the tail itself. For a lot of this, I'd probably be doing this on the perspective view and then looking over here in that camera to see how it looks. And that's because I can't really see the tail very well here. I'm not going to pose it from here. That would be insane. So I'm just going to start here. Your first pose, your temptation might be just to have it be neutral, but I would recommend against that. You want to have some interest right from the very beginning. So I'm just going to go through here. But you can use, nope, you can't with this rig. Sometimes you can use up and down arrow keys to drag through the keys. So I'm just going to tilt it up a little bit. I'm just thinking about where it was before. And because the ear's kind of in the way, I'm going to shift it a little bit to the side here. So I'm just going to grab these controls right here and just rotate all of them together to the side, just so we get a slightly better pose here. And it's not much is going to help this to be seen. It's just too covered up by the body. So, but you can see I can kind of twist it like that or something like that. This is going to add some movement. And then here, same thing. You know, I'm just going to pose it to where it used to be. This first joint will probably be the most important in trying to get the right angle, and the rest is just all icing on the cake. So you do want to be a little bit careful about just always bending in the same direction. It's going to get boring fast. So a little bit of variety here goes a long way to creating more visual interest and just a little bit more of a naturalistic feel. But always go back here and check it in this view and see if you like what you're getting. So you can also just do it here. So I think it was the green one. Yeah. So you can always just adjust it here and see the result from this camera. I do have my auto key on at this point. Just makes my job a little bit easier. So here, when we have a big impact like we do this time, again, I'm just going to grab these keys, press F to zoom in, and then just grab all of these at once in the tail. I'll later on try to make a script to make that a little bit easier. So the frame before impact right here, we definitely want the tail to be up to where it used to be. So we can see the tail is kind of delaying a little bit already. And then when it hits here on that one frame, it should come all the way to the ground. So I'm going to just curve it a little bit to the side. And there's no one way to do this. I could like tilt it down here and then tilt this back a little bit. You know, it depends on the rigidity of your tail. Remember, a little bit to the ground isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as the audience doesn't see it. So something like that. Again, we're seeing it come up, smack down in one frame. And then here, I'm going to have it pop back up kind of in a bounce. In fact, maybe it pops back up right here. So I'm just going to try it out and see how it feels. So we're just going to rotate them all up. Maybe bend this one down a little bit, something like this. So I just want to feel that impact. When it comes up, it smacks down in one frame and then pops back up. In this case, it pops back up and then goes to kind of this weird pose. Well, let's see how it looks before I change it. Doesn't look quite as dramatic as I expected. So this pose right here, I feel like it needs to go higher. And that's a lot of that higher feeling is going to have to come from that root joint. That's going to be where you really get that angle. I'm going to straighten this one out a little bit. Let's see how that looks. That's better. But I don't like what's going on here. It's too much. So I'm just going to actually take this key for all 4 controls. This is a good technique to use. If it's just getting to be like too much and you're getting jumpy movement, sometimes the best thing is just to delete a key and let Maya in between it for you. And it smooths out the action. So that's better. I could add a different in-between in here instead. That might also work. So it could be already kind of coming to that side. Again, I'm going to have to do it in this view. So maybe it's already swinging over this way. Liking that better. Cool. I'm going to save this before I lose it. So save as. I haven't saved in a while, which is really bad of me. So I'll say tail pass. Cool. For the next part here, it's the same type of thing. As the character gets ready to jump, I'm just going to have to go hit in between poses. And try to get better poses in there. So remember again, right before it hits the ground, which is mostly again that base tail. And then maybe I'll try sweeping these the other way. So kind of not crazy about that one. You can see that it doesn't quite feel right from here to here. That means I got to put in additional poses. Maybe I'll put it back. So here we have right before impact, which kind of like it big and flat like that. And then as it comes up, I can immediately go to something a little bit more flexed. And then here, I'm not liking this pose so much. And I'm just scrubbing through and trying to feel like what it would do. So, sorry about that. So for me, I'm thinking maybe at this point it would actually be kind of coming up like this, down like this, and down like this. So let's see, I'm just going to scrub through, watch the action. I like that. That feels good. I think here, I probably would have the tail start going this way. And you can look at this from different angles to try to get the right feel. So over. This one might work better to be up more. And up more. There we go. So I'm just scrubbing through and trying to get that feel. As soon as we get impact, like right here, we should expect that tail to come down very quickly. Again, I'm just thinking the base is going to move faster than everything else. So this might be a little bit late, but let's see. So impact here. And then this would mean I'd want the opposite to happen here, that the tail would be coming down. So remember, the tail is always a little bit behind everything else. Bounce. Smack. That might be too much. So I might have overdone this one. So basically I do a rough pass on this, trying to get that right feel. And then and then after this, I'm going to play it and see if I got it or not. When you're first doing this stuff, your tendency is to not get it. I'm going to zero this out really quick. It's getting kind of wonky in there. I'm just going to add, for the ending pose, a little bit of a curl and a downturn. So something like this, just to give it a little dimension and interest. And of course, make sure I like it from this view. So keep scrubbing. I'm guessing this is going to move a little too fast. So I'm just going to delete this key in the middle. Right click delete. So it just settles a little bit sooner. And in fact, what I could do is drag a little bit so it overlapped already at the end. All right. So now I roughed it out. I'm going to go ahead and play it back. Cool. That's actually feeling pretty good to me. The only thing I don't like, the bounce at the end is too extreme for me. I wonder if I can doesn't have to bounce all the way to the ground like it impacted. And then there's a pose right in here that just keeps sticking out to me. I don't like that one right there. Just feels kind of dead from this angle, like too flat. So that one maybe I'll add a little bit of curve to. So even though it's kind of nice there, it's a little bit too late for me. So I might just be overdoing the smackdown on the tail. So again, maybe I'll just lower this here, but raise this back up. I think I didn't lower it enough. So we don't get full impact on the ground. It just comes down a little bit harder. So smack. There we go. It would be good to study tails. I admit I didn't have to do a lot of tail animation when I was in the industry. So that's not bad. There's also like a kind of a gross flat tail right there. Yeah, it just feels a little bit stagnant for me. So I touched it up too. And then keep that one from bouncing so much. Maybe just reduce the motion so it's not a full smack. I'm going to do that really quick and we'll come back and look at it. I guess I'm going to show you how to fix this one too. It's just a different technique. So here, just using Alt period to kind of walk through the animation and see what I like. I like how it curves through here. There's a little bit of a dead spot right from here to here because these poses aren't that different. So I can play with that too. But my bigger concern is here as it comes over and we get that smack kind of impact feel. It's just too big of a movement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pose here, which I know I like, and this pose here, which is too much. I'm just going to copy this pose over here. So I'm just going to, I have just the tail selected. I'm going to paste it right here. Oh, paste. And then I'm just going to readjust it. So I'm just taking the previous pose, which I know is already working. I'm just going to reduce it a little bit. And as I do this, I'm going to add a little bit of overlap on the tail. A little more overlap. Again, if it starts to get hard to pose or hard to see what you're doing, just go ahead and zero it out and try again. So here, so it's going to come down, but not as dramatically as it did before. And again, it feels pretty dead at the end, so that's something I'd be working on too. I think I need an even longer period of time for this to follow through. Maybe exaggerate the squash and stretch here a little bit. There we go. All right, let's see what that looks like. Not bad, not bad. I would still keep playing with it, but I think you guys are getting the idea. I could definitely add in another key here. Like I feel like it's not really following the body movement right there. So that's something I'd work on, but also that's partly an issue of overlap. Okay, just saved a little time and went through and did a couple more passes on the tail just to try to get it to feel better. I was pretty disappointed. This part's all feeling good to me, but this part right here at the end, it just sort of felt funky. Like the tail never kind of did something that looked good to me. So I just added a couple poses. I mostly took out poses. It's really, again, really easy to overkey things. I did notice that there would be a nice moment right here where the tail sort of comes to a stop, where I could actually have it keep going, which could be kind of fun. That might be overkill too, but I could have a little fun there. I don't need to go through every one of these and do overlap, like make it go at different times, but there are places to put in additional poses which will help that feel and loosen this up. So at the very beginning, I can't really see the tail, so I could spend some time on it. Normally I would. I think from any other angle you would definitely see that it feels really stiff because there isn't overlap, just different poses. So here, as the character goes up, it's going to a down pose. So that's not terrible, but the main reason why I'm not going to play with it is I can't see it. Here I could add a little overlap in here so that the tail doesn't hit exactly the same time as the other one. So I'll probably fix that. This is feeling really nice to me. I like how this is going. I might add an additional couple keys on the root to have it delay a little bit more. But so far it's pretty cute. This transition's really nice. But this is one of the easy places for me to add in overlap. The reason why it's not actually overlapping right now, you can see that all of these tail pieces all get to this key at exactly the same time. So while it looks cool, like it is follow through on the main body, it's not actually overlap. So we'll get some overlap there. We'll probably add a little bit in here. This part's all fine. We could add a little bit more in here if we want. But the main place we're going to want to see overlap for sure is at the end of a move. So here as the tail comes and relaxes into place, it all happens at the same time. So this is where we can use that stair-stepping technique we did in the dope sheet to get some of that feeling in there. Excuse me. It will add just enough looseness to start to liven this up quite a bit. So I'll start with this one at the end. Because it's a finished move, you'll see it much more readily. So I could go in here and just add an additional keys to keep these moving, but like I showed at the end of class last week, if I were to grab these and go into the dope sheet, Windows Animation Editor's dope sheet, we can find this key. So right now this is the rotation. We want to know what we're going to be overlapping here, so we can find it and isolate it. Okay, so it's this rotation, well actually all the rotations for the tail. I want them to offset. So this is the first joint, second joint, third joint, fourth joint, and the first three controls are rotation. We can just do the whole dang thing because all it is 3 rotations in a scale. So I can click on this to grab all of them, or I can do a little drag box. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take each one of these keys by grabbing the top, middle mouse clicking and dragging. Make sure you're in translate mode, W. And this will just ensure that each one of these comes to a stop at a different time. I can also jump over to the graph editor. And so now they're all offset here. I'm just going to grab this whole chunk and just make sure that they are easing out using a flat tangent. It should have been set before, but sometimes if you rekey them, get offset. Unfortunately, dragging them out now is going to be a challenge if I hadn't offset them. Let's take a look at this. So if I put this back to where it was, you'll see that if I want to offset the E's out at the end. It's easier to do when they're all together. And then in the dope sheet, you can spread them out like this. Let's see what this looks like. Just a very kind of ordinary stair step. I'm going to drag through here. What we should see is that each joint in the tail gets there at a different time. Can you see how the end of the tail is last and the first part of the tail is first? You can even do that in some cases, like right here. We can also overlap them. So right around in this pose, I'm going to go to the graph editor. Again, select my joints, preferably in order, makes life a little bit easier. And then dope sheet, see if there's anything around here that I can just zooming in, that I can offset. So I could try to offset all these sections here. So maybe if I took these three and set them back, and then these, set them forward, and these, set them even further forward. Now this whole section is delayed. And in fact, I can play. Now sometimes I'm going back, sometimes I'm going forward. Depends on how much room I have to play. We could offset and stair step that whole section. Sometimes that looks good, sometimes it gets a little too busy. Let's see what we got. It's a little busy. Let's see what it looks like from our main angle. I like it. There's a little bit of funkiness in there, but it gets covered up by here. But overall, I'm going to turn off the NURBS curves at the moment, Alt-1. But now our tail has a bit of life to it. Hopefully you guys can feel that. We can do the same thing in here. So I just like to put my my time indicator about where I want to start playing. Grab the controls, Alt-1 to bring them back. Again, if you're going to use a dope sheet, you do have to select them in order. Otherwise, you're going to get a funky overlap. And so same thing. Same thing as before. I'm going to get to my dope sheet. Look for where I am in the animation. There I am. So it's this one that I want to offset. And again, if you want to, I could offset both sections. Sometimes I'll go back to, so the timing feels like it's still centered around here, although I might do all on those forward. So they're kind of centered on either side of this line. In sections like this where it's really tight, sometimes it's better not to do that. It just gets a little bit too confusing. But let's see if that helps that section. Ooh, so this gets really smooth at this point. You can really feel that overlap. I would love to get some overlap right here too. This might be a little harder to get the right keys, but let's see what we can get. So that is that section. It is a little tight, but let's try it out. Good idea if you're going to try something you're not sure if it's going to work or not, just go ahead and save. So you can always go back. And I'm just going to take this whole section and offset it back to 1, keep that one there, and then offset this forward. You don't always have to do a perfect stair step too. Like I could actually offset this action before so that maybe the end of the tail is extra delayed. Maybe this one's by 2 and this one's by 2. You'll see it if you start to overdo it pretty quickly. Let's see what we get now. Overall, I'm liking how it's looking, especially with the extra overlap. Right here, this feels kind of sticky to me in a weird way. The tail comes up. And what I really want to do is do an overlap in between these two. It's just awkward that it never goes the other way. So that's something I'd fix. This one, as it's coming down, the tail's coming down too early. I'd fix that. This is a result of me sort of randomly going in here and offsetting things. So The fact that I offset all these isn't necessarily working everywhere I wanted it to, so I might have to do that manually. So I probably would undo that. This part I liked. That one worked out nicely. It tends to work better with a finishing move as opposed to in the middle of something complex. So if this was something I was working on, I would undo this offset here and then put this one back because I did like that. And then do any offsets in here manually because they're just not lining up right. The only other offset I was looking at doing was this one as it comes in. I felt could have used a little bit of offsetting. So there again, I'd come in, try to find where the animation that I'm looking at. So it's this one right here that I'm heading into. So this one I might do a little bit of that same action. And I don't know why I have these guys here. I'm just going to offset them anyway. So offset back 2, offset back 1, and then that one's neutral and this one is forward. So that would be my offsetting, something like that. Yeah, now this is doing weird stuff too, where it's impacting way early, so that's not going to work there. Again, anytime you do the stair-stepping exercise in the middle of a movement, you just got to be careful. It's the end of a movement, probably like something like this, where it's likely to look better. But still, this is even in the middle of movement, so I wouldn't even do it there. What I would do is I can just manually go in here and put in an extra key, or delay this one here. I think delaying this one by 1 might be helpful. So here, yeah, I get a slightly better overlap there. I could even move this pose over 1. So he comes in and then impacts in the next frame. Yeah, that's better. And it might be fun, like, to actually have that tail come up first in between here. So I could put an in-between pose where this is actually coming up. Again, just be careful here. If you start to get too many keys, you're going to get in a situation where you're going to get in a situation where it's going to start bouncing around because you're trying to do too much at once with a very complicated system. So a lot of times less is more in those cases. Cool, liking that. And again, I just would fix this little section in here. Since we're already going way over time, I might as well just do it in front of you. What I'm just thinking here is that it takes too long to get here. And as soon as he takes off, I'd want some sort of change. So probably what I need is another pose here where this, I'm going to save just in case, where this starts to come down right away and this section's still going back the other way. That might be too much. Let's see. So it's coming up. No, that actually might be good. At this point, I'm just kind of looking for opportunities to loosen this. This is kind of like we're doing in class, but I'm doing it manually by hand. So I'm just watching it and looking for opportunities for things to change. Remember that any sudden changes will result in a sudden change in the tail as well. So I'm just watching the end of the tail as this goes up. This is looking pretty good, but this gets straight too soon, I feel like. So I'm going to just give it a little extra bend. Again, for this impact, it probably would be better if I delayed it by 1. I'm going to try that just to see how it feels. Somehow I did not do that. I think it's just because I was doing the end of the tail. So I'm going to go back to grabbing all parts of the tail. You can also see now this is getting really kind of messy in here. This is where you start to be careful about with whichever you have selected. And now I'm not really getting my pose, which is odd. I'm going to undo that and just slide it back. So I'm going to copy this pose here and copy it over one frame and give it even more of an extreme rotation. This might be overdoing it, but I have it saved, so I'm not too worried. So we have even more of a rotation, and then this is going to, in the next frame, come way down. This feels a little delayed to me. You can also right click in here and choose tangents. You can't see it's below the screen, I'm sorry, but you can right click on, oh, you really can't see it. If you right click on the key, you can choose tangents and then spline. Let's see if I click a little higher, you can see it. Nope. Here, I'll do it this way. So right click, tangents, spline. It's possible the spline is wrong and it's not evenly moving through there. So that's a fast way to do it. You just can't see what you did. Yeah, I just feel like that tail should be coming up a little faster. So maybe I take this key and move it back a couple frames. And then move this one back a couple frames. There we go. I like that better. Cool. That's feeling pretty good to me. So I pressed Alt-1 so I can see it without everything, and that's going to press play and see what I get. So we now have overlap. I still feel like the beginning is a little bit dry with the tail, that it could use a little bit more spice and fun, but I'm getting good overlapping action here at the beginning and end of these moves. And nice feeling to overlap in the middle by making the right poses. So it's sort of a combination of techniques that we did in class to make this work. But a lot of it's manually by hand. The most important thing is doing it at the right time, which is at the end of the animation, or in using the right structure, which is ultimately setting your keys, getting your fixing your curves to the body only, not really worrying about the tail. Get some basic moves in there, doing your squash and stretch if you're going to do it, or adding as little as much as you like, and then going and doing the thing that's going to be doing the overlap last. If you want, you could play with going back over here and trying the different characters. So I should be able to switch over to, save it before you do this, the other characters to see how they feel. So if you prefer the ball, that's fine. So that's pretty fun, although I kind of like the fox. That's pretty cool. Try the beaver. Probably whatever you animated it to is going to be the best option, in the sense that it's what you compose the shot for, so that what you originally chose is probably going to look the best. So I'm sorry that took a million years. That was a lot longer than I thought. Choose the sections you need to, and hopefully they'll give you what you need, give you the boost you need. So good luck. Take your time. Make sure that blocking is solid, and it will pay off for sure, even if the tail's not perfect. All right? And think about the character. What kind of cool things you can have the character do to keep this fun.